What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is the total takedown for UFC Jacksonville. That's right, we are going back over the card. We're talking overs and unders, trying to find any extra little angle to give you to make some cash. Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already, and let's dig straight on into this bad boy. First fight of the night is Sedriques Dumas taking on Cody Brundage. We've got a 1.5 here for this one. Over 1.5 is plus 140, under 1.5 is minus 160, and I gotta lean with violence here in this spot. So you've got Sedriques Dumas coming in with a chip on his shoulder after being embarrassed in his last fight. He's primarily been a finisher for the most part of his career. He's got big height and reach advantages. He also sucks on the ground, and you've got Cody Brundage, who is a monster in there. Big power, almost knocked out Rodolfo Vieira. He's got strong wrestling, a decent submission game on him himself, and he's a round one machine. Like, this guy's fights don't tend to go over 1.5 in general anyway. So if he's getting a step down in competition, he probably is still that killer be killed guy that you love to see. I'll say under 1.5 to get the night started. Clint Rodriguez takes on Tatsuro Taira in the next fight. A 2.5 total. Over 2.5 is plus 115. The under 2.5 is minus 135. And again, I think we can make arguments for violence here. I expect Tatsuro Taira to have a decent-sized grappling advantage here in this spot. We have seen that be the kryptonite for Clint Rodriguez before. He puts everything he's got into every strike, trying to kill his opponent, and he doesn't leave a whole lot of gas in the tank for if he happens to fail. I think Tatsuro Taira can take advantage of that. If he gets this thing to the ground, he should be winning by submission. Now, on the feet, Clint Rodriguez is nothing to sneeze at. This guy is training with Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Reminds me a whole lot of the former 155 champion. And if he lands some of those big power shots on Tatsuro, the kid seems tough, but we have yet to see him take that kind of a power shot. So I think it makes sense both these guys can finish inside their realm under 2.5. Next up, Jack Jenkins takes on Jamall Emmers. Another 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 is minus 175, and the under 2.5 is plus 155. And to be honest with you guys, I actually would be tempted to look at violence yet again here in this spot. That plus money seems interesting. So Jamall Emmers, he has shown some poor fight IQ. He's had some spots where maybe he could have finished and then let his guy off the hook, but that doesn't mean that finishing capability isn't still there. He's massive for the weight class. He's super long. He's a strong grappler. He's got good BJJ. He hits hard. Like, this is a guy that can finish. Jack Jenkins is not tested at this level, but he is a finisher himself. Those leg kicks especially come to mind. The way Jamall Emmers has these long, skinny chicken legs, I think the leg kicks of Jack Jenkins are going to be very effective, which is probably going to force this thing into a barn burner, and if that's the case, someone's going to sleep. I actually kind of like violence here at a plus number. Jose Mariscal taking on Trevor Peek. A 1.5 total. Over 1.5 is plus 125. The under 1.5 is minus 145. And it's hard to argue anything but under in a Trevor Peek fight. One of these days, one of these people is going to come out and just be too slick for him to handle. Somebody who takes him down. Somebody who makes him chase. Somebody who plays the outside in the range game. However, his opponent this week is not that guy. He's going to come in and he's going to lose his mind throwing big hammers as soon as he gets clipped. As soon as one of these guys gets hurt, it's off to the races until somebody's unconscious on the canvas. These guys brawl. That's just how it is. So I'm going to go ahead and lean under 1.5 here for the Trevor Peek fight yet again. Next up, you got Josh Van taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov, a 2.5 total. The over is chalked up all the way to minus 190, and I think that makes sense. Zhalgas Zhumagulov really only finishes people that don't belong here in the UFC. Josh Van is young, Josh Van is green, but I think he belongs. The kid is also really tough. I think he's going to come out here and show a good account of himself, but I do think he's just going to kind of get dragged into the usual Zhalgas Zhumagulov fights that we tend to see, which means this bad boy's going a full 15 minutes. I'm not expecting a finish. I think we see Josh get welcomed to the UFC by a veteran who knows how to get a win, and that drags this fight deep. Jillian Robertson, Tabitha Ricci, my girl up next. 2.5 the total. Over 2.5 is minus 205. Under 2.5 is plus 180, and I find this a little bit interesting. So I do think the finish only comes from one side. Tabitha Ricci is not known to be much of a finisher. If she is able to take on somebody who's old, who's fragile, who she can bully, those are the people who she can take out of there. That's not going to be Jillian Robertson. She's not old, and she's going to be much larger and much more physical than any of Ricci's previous opponents that she's done that to. Jillian, on the other hand, with that size and strength advantage, I do think she'll be able to get the better of Tabitha Ricci on the ground. But again, that's what leads me to questioning this total, because I only think the finish comes from Jillian. And Tabitha might be scrambly enough and strong enough to hang around in this fight. And if that's the case, then this thing might end up working its way up and over 2.5. Both women have been open on interviews saying they are looking for the finish and they believe that they can finish. There's plenty of offensive firepower here for me to justify an under 2.5. I think it's Jillian more often than not getting the finish, so I might look for a better number at her price specifically, but I do think this fight goes under. We'll say under 2.5. Give me some violence. Loic Radzhabov is taking on Mateusz Rebecki up next, a 2.5 total. The over 2.5 minus 170. The under 2.5 is plus 155. And this one's tough. Loic actually hits really hard. So does Mateusz Rebecki. I think Rebecki's got a slightly better gas tank. However, Loic is going to be massive in this spot. He's just huge. I actually think there's some chance that this fight gets finished as well. Loic, when he's early, when he's fresh, I think he can crack, and he might hurt Rebecki early on. If this thing turns into a dogfight and it gets dragged out and there's a whole lot of grappling but nobody goes out, Rebecki, I think, has a chance to finish the deeper this fight goes. So it might be towards the end of the third round. That 2.5 might get you in trouble, but I actually think someone ends up getting finished here in this spot. Now, if these guys come out and it's just grappling, all wrestling the whole time, 24/7, we're going 15. But I think both guys actually managed to mix in their striking enough that we see somebody get clipped at some point. So again, I'll say violence this week. Wellington Turman taking on Randy Brown, another 2.5. Over 2.5 plus 110, under 2.5 minus 130, under all day. Give me more violence. I think this is going to be a finish-heavy card, folks. This is one of those low-level cards where the name value isn't fantastic unless you're a hardcore or a gambler. Then you know what's up, and this card is going to be spectacular. I think both guys have a lot of finishing upside. We've seen Wellington Turman get chinned by guys like Andrew Sanchez, which means you got to worry about that. He's dropping to a new weight class. I actually think that'll allow him to be the bully in this situation, which he needs to be to make his style work. So that could up his offensive firepower, but it could also damage his chin. If we get a drained and dehydrated Wellington Turman that can't quite do 170 pounds, then he's going to be easier to clip and put away as well. So Wellington Turman has some knockout potential. We just saw Randy Brown get chinned. Obviously, Turman is not that caliber of a boxer, but if he lands one, he does hit hard. He's going to have submission upside. We've seen Randy Brown get in trouble on the mat with that. And then if Turman gets tired, Randy Brown's got a decent offensive jiu-jitsu game himself, and he's going to be the much cleaner striker. Definitely under 2.5, minus 130. Phil Rowe taking on Neil Magny, 2.5. Death taxes and Magny by decision, folks. This is an interesting spot, though, because I'm not sure that applies. Phil Rowe is a finisher, 100% finish rate in his professional career. He's going to come out looking for the kill. Neil Magny is getting a big break in competition here, a big step down, perceptively, right? Like, maybe Phil Rowe is a top 10 guy, and this isn't actually a step down at all. We'll find out on Saturday, but name value-wise, this is a massive jump up for Phil Rowe. He's got to prove himself. It's a big step down and break for Neil Magny. We'll see what happens. But Neil Magny does have a tendency of getting some of these guys that don't belong in there with him out. So I think Neil Magny actually could wear out Phil Rowe. We've seen him struggle with fights that go a little bit deeper before. We've seen him have trouble with the wrestling and the grappling. If Magny can wear this guy out, I think he'll be ripe for the finish deep in this fight. And Magny's got some decent pop in his hands. Phil Rowe, he's a finisher early. We've seen Magny hurt and knocked out. We've also seen him dragged to the floor and submitted. I think Phil Rowe more often than not plays off of his back. He's not really the offensive wrestler type. But if Magny slips up, if Magny gets reversed, or even if he gets knocked down, then Phil Rowe all of a sudden has an option for BJJ. So I definitely think violence makes sense here. The under 2.5 is plus 150. I probably would take fight doesn't go the distance on this one rather than an under 2.5. But I do think there's avenues for both guys to get a finish. Bruno Silva taking on Brendan Allen, 1.5 total. The over 1.5 minus 140. The under 1.5 is plus 120. And this is a fight that I actually think finishes, but they got a good number here on us at the 1.5. I'm not sure what to make of it because Brendan Allen has shown some really good flowing striking on the feet, but he's hittable, and he's been chinned a lot in the past. I talked about how fragile this guy can be. He's taken on Bruno Silva, who's one of the hardest hitters in the division. If Bruno connects once clean, this fight is over. Bruno Silva, even though he's been solid grappling recently, he's got 6 pro losses all by sub. And Brendan Allen is a ridiculous talent when it comes to his grappling. In fact, we remember his striking most recently, but Brendan Allen's jiu-jitsu is by far the best aspect of his game. If this thing hits the ground, which it should, Brendan Allen is going to tap Bruno Silva probably in no time at all. If it stays standing, Brendan Allen has been known to make poor choices trying to beat people at their own game, and he could pay for that here. I definitely lean violence, but I'm not sure I lean under 1.5. I think this fight could get up and over that 1.5 round mark, but your butthole would be puckered the entire time. I'm not betting it, but over 1.5 is going to be the play. Minus 140 is a little too pricey for me. Gabriel Santos taking on David Onama up next. We have a 2.5, and this fight's tricky. Over 2.5, plus 115. Under 2.5 is minus 135. And I really struggle because David Onama in his last fight, I think, would have been out of there if Nate the Train had just decided he wanted to get a finish. The man decided to play the crowd. He wanted to show off. He wanted to have a good time. So he let him up multiple different times. I think if he just keeps beating on David Onama, the ref takes him out of there. And David Onama had Nate the Train dead to rights in round 1. A lot of other people would have been absolutely dead from the punch that he landed. Gabriel Santos impressed everybody in his UFC debut in his last fight. Strong wrestling, good striking, hell of a chin on this kid, and he's got high-level BJJ as well. So I think he can maybe expose David Onama on the mat just a little bit. I wonder if we get a more prepped and prepared David Onama to go 15 rounds, not necessarily thinking he's going to walk through his opponent. And if that's the case, David Onama's fast, he's athletic, he hits hard. It's up to whether or not Gabriel Santos can survive the punishment of Onama being in the driver's seat. I'm not sure Onama can survive having Gabriel Santos on the mat in the driver's seat. I think I'm going to say over 2.5. I think we get kind of a back and forth war in this spot where both guys are prepped and ready to go. They brought their lunches and we see a 15-minute fight, maybe even fight of the night. I'll say over 2.5. Justin Tafa taking on Austen Lane. 1.5 the total, under 1.5 is juiced all the way to minus 210, and it's hard to argue against that. Justin Tafa's got crazy power, and when someone charges into him and lands, he's got opportunities to throw back, and he absolutely destroys people with that power. Lane is a round 1 finisher. The guy blitzes in from halfway across the cage. He's very tall. He's very long. He can hit you when you don't have the opportunity to hit him back. But we saw what happened when Greg Hardy had the opportunity to land. He put this man down. I don't know what to think of him. I'm not sure if he's UFC caliber. I'm not sure if he's got a chin on him. He could be the next big thing at heavyweight. I have no clue. I can't wait to see more from Austen Lane and have him tested here in this spot. If he's smart, he probably takes Tafa down, or he stays out of range and just kind of chips away at him from distance. I'm not sure I can trust him to do that. So I'd love to tell you over 1.5 at plus 180 is the move. That would be the tinfoil hat play of the week. But I have no evidence to support that that's actually what's taking place at this point. So it's a pass for me, and we probably got to lean with somebody getting cracked early. Co-main event, Maycee Barber taking on Amanda Ribas. We got a 2.5. The over is minus 205. The under is plus 180. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and give a vote here for an under. Maycee Barber is a strong wrestler, although she's gotten away from her grappling training recently. She likes to work more with her hands and her elbows. She's really turned into a solid striker, and she's getting better. She hits hard, she's got big power, and Amanda Ribas is chinny. I do think Maycee Barber's going to clip and hurt Amanda at some point in this fight, so I think the knockout is really the way to go. But if you want to at least play devil's advocate, Amanda Ribas is a high-level BJJ black belt. We've seen what she can do to these girls on the mat, and even though Maycee Barber is strong, I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody the caliber of Ribas was able to tie her into a knot on Saturday. So I actually think under 2.5 has some legs here. Plus 180, give me violence. Show off, ladies. Let's go. Main event time. Ilia Topuria taking on Josh Emmett. Total again at 2.5. The over is plus 195. The under 2.5 is minus 220. And this fight really could go either way because, folks, frankly, as much as I think Ilia Topuria is going to roll through on this fight, it's just Josh Emmett has gotten to that stage of his career and that age. I'm done doubting the guy. Like, we've seen him go out there and fight with 2 completely blown knees for 15 straight minutes and put up 150 significant strikes. Josh Emmett is made out of something else, and his heart is really the key here. He does not quit. It doesn't matter how broken his body is. He will continue to go unless he's completely unconscious, and that's hard to pull off, actually putting this guy out. So I've got a weird feeling this fight lasts a little bit longer than maybe people are expecting. I'm pretty sure we're getting out of round 1. Both these guys are going to be a little cautious of the power coming back the other direction at them, but I do think eventually we find a finish. It's a matter of when, not if. I think this thing gets into the second round. Does it get over 2.5? I'm not so sure. Am I going to lay under 2.5 minus 220? Not a chance. I do think this fight finishes, but this total has me kind of spooked off it at this point. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we get into the third or even the fourth round in this fight, because Ilia Topuria takes a big jump up against a tough veteran who's willing to stand in there and not shy away at the first sign of power, or maybe even we see some grappling. There's a lot of ways this fight could go. One way or the other, Ilia Topuria eventually is going to finish Josh Emmett. It's just a matter of when, and I'm not sure when that is. That's the Total Takedown, everybody. Good luck on all your action. Take a look at what you got here. Post your favorite bet down in the comments. We'll see you tomorrow for the undefeated post weigh-in show, and let's roll.